We tend to think of corporate structure as something resembling a pyramid. The CEO sits at the top, dictating the behaviors of his immediate subordinates. In turn, they each supervise a set of lesser division managers who would then supervise their own employees. These hierarchies and organizational structures shape how decisions are made and how information is communicated and processed. But things are changing. Deregulation, expansion of trade, and an increasingly globalized economy have come to define an immensely complex business environment. In response, corporations have adopted different modes of internal governance, different structures, different ways of making decisions, different incentives, and different skills. Is it possible that the tall corporate hierarchies of the past may no longer be effective? For decades, management consultants and the popular business press have urged large firms to flatten their hierarchy. But what is flattening? Flattening, also known as delayering, typically refers to the elimination of layers in a firm's organizational hierarchy. This, in turn, often results in a broadening span of executive control, paired with the delegation of many high-level decision-making responsibilities to lower levels. Why should a company flatten its hierarchy? Flattening allows a firm to remain competitive in the face of increased competition. Pursuing the ideal of a streamlined and efficient organization will allow the company to respond more quickly to customers and to operate more smoothly. So, have companies flattened? And if so, what are the implications of the flattening process? Crucial to understanding the influence of flattening in an organization is an examination of executive decision-making. How are important choices being made within the company, and who is making them? Through historical research and quantitative data analysis, it has been demonstrated that companies have indeed flattened. But the effects of this flattening are not necessarily what they are widely assumed to be. Typically, flattening is thought to result in the burden of decision-making being passed to lower-level division managers, allowing the overseeing manager to broaden the scope of his or her involvement in the organization. However, instead of delegating decision-making, many flattened firms exhibited more control and decision-making at the very top of the pyramid. Furthermore, many CEOs report in interviews that they flattened to get closer to the business and become more involved, not less, in internal operations and subordinate activities. In other words, firms may flatten structure in order to delegate decisions, but doing so can have precisely the opposite effect and lead to unintended consequences for other aspects of internal governance. As mentioned previously, research has revealed that the process of flattening, while certainly promoting some of the advertised effects, also exposes alternative effects. There were three main observed effects of flattening that supported the advertised view. Within flattened firms, it was found that organizations experienced delayering, a broader span of CEO control, and at least some delegation of decision-making at the top. However, the same research revealed two key alternative effects of flattening that oppose the advertised view. First off, flattened firms enforced changes in the composition of their executive team. Essentially, there are more C-suite executives, also known as functional specialists, following an organizational flattening. Second, research revealed distinct changes in executive pay. Division manager pay declined along with the observed increase in functional specialist positions. CEO pay also increases. What do these observed effects of flattening really tell us about decision making? It would seem that standard classifications of centralization versus decentralization are far too simplistic. Firms have exhibited characteristics of both. Nevertheless, recent trends suggest a greater centralization of decision-making authority at the very top. Because of this fact, it is valuable to more closely examine the role of the CEO within a flattened organization. How can the true effect of flattening on the CEO be determined? The first method relies on what CEOs themselves have to say on the subject. Of 7 CEOs interviewed, all managers of flattened Fortune 500 companies, all reported that they had greater involvement in the day-to-day operations and activities of their subordinates. This is far from the hands-off delegation of decision-making that might be expected. When it comes down to it, these CEOs were all very much in the driver's seat. The second method of determining the effect of flattening on the chief executive relies on something called a time use study. Under observation and analysis, the actions of each CEO during working hours, working alone, conducting meetings, and interacting with employees and clients, for example, was tracked, recorded, and compared to the first-hand reports. The time use study parallels the results of these interviews. Across the board, there was more CEO interaction and involvement in internal operations. In light of these facts, how can managers leverage the effects of flattening to ensure the best possible outcomes? There's no simple answer. However, there are a couple of guidelines. For optimal firm performance, latitude and autonomy in decision-making should be bundled with performance-based pay incentives. The company should select competent managers who deeply value autonomy and are already skilled at making decisions. Essentially, in a flattened firm, the selection of functional specialists as managers should be thorough in order to make sure that they are capable of making competent decisions on their own. If these changes can be implemented successfully, the corporation will enjoy a lean and strategic advantage in the marketplace. Let's wrap things up. Flattening is the process of removing layers in a firm's organizational structure. Flattening is not the same as simply pushing decisions down. This shift in organizational structure positions more functional managers in the executive top team, affording the CEO a broader span of control. Flattening also changes the role of the CEO dramatically. The senior executive group is led by a CEO who is more involved, not less. While flattening may superficially appear to be a move toward decentralization, the key decisions are still made under the increasingly centralized authority of the executive body. Ultimately, these changes, if implemented with awareness and capability, are critical in the process of streamlining an organization, just not in the way it was originally believed.